Hello, you are watching Shalom World News. I'm Marina Grosu from Washington, D.C. Here are the latest headlines from around the world. As U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrived in Israel to seek an extension of the truce between Israel and Hamas, set to expire today, both parties have agreed to extend the truce for one more day. Blinken, on his third visit to the region since the conflict began on October 7th, is scheduled to meet with Israeli officials to discuss prolonging the ceasefire and increasing humanitarian aid into Gaza. On Wednesday, Hamas released 16 hostages, reciprocated by Israel releasing 30 Palestinians. Following his general audience on Wednesday, Pope Francis expressed hope for extending the truce in the Gaza Strip. The Holy Father urged the humanitarian pause to continue, ensuring the release of all hostages and facilitating the entry of necessary humanitarian aid into the region. Calling for peace into the region, he appealed to the faithful to pray for those affected. The United Nations Commission of Inquiry, tasked with investigating war crimes on both sides of the Israel-Hamas conflict, will delve into cases of sexual assault committed by Hamas during attacks on Israel on October 7th. The Commission plans to launch an appeal for evidence as part of its broader investigation into war crimes. Facing criticism from Israel and families of Israeli hostages over the UN's perceived silence, Commission Chair Navi Pillay stated to Reuters on Wednesday that she intends to forward the gathered information to the International Criminal Court, urging consideration for prosecutions. Concurrently with more Israeli hostages released by Hamas as part of a ceasefire, details of the atrocities they endured during over 50 days in captivity are gradually emerging. Nicaragua's dictatorship government has released photographs and videos of Bishop Rolando Álvarez, who was sentenced last February to more than 26 years in prison, alleging several crimes, including so-called treason against the homeland. The images were released on Tuesday night, a day after Alvarez, the Bishop of the Diocese of Matagalpa and Apostolic Administrator of the Diocese of Esteli, turned 57. The Interior Ministry of the Sandinista government stated that the prelate's confinement conditions are preferential, contrasting with the slanderous campaigns against the government. However, Auxiliary Bishop of Managua, Silvio Baez, has denounced the measure, pointing out that the images and video do not excuse the regime's crime. Bishop Baez, who remains in exile, urged Bishop Alvarez's prompt release, reaffirming his innocence. Pope Francis invited Franciscan friars and sisters to recommit themselves to spreading the gospel of poverty and fraternity in the modern world on the 8th centennial of the confirmation of St. Francis's rule on November 29, 1223. In a letter, the Holy Father addressed the Order's Ministers General, highlighting the global outreach of Franciscan friars and sisters as aligned with the broader Christian call to be an outgoing church. Cardinal Angelo de Donatis, the Pope's vicar for the diocese, presided over a solemn ceremony on Wednesday afternoon at the Papal Archbasilica of St. John Lateran in Rome. During the ceremony, the letter from Pope Francis was read, emphasizing the significance of the occasion. The celebration saw the participation of friars, nuns, and lay members from the three orders founded by St. Francis. The Austrian Bishops are reiterating the Church's stance on protecting life, asserting that there is no human right to abortion. On the 50th anniversary of the National Council's decision to make abortion legal under certain circumstances, known as the Deadline Regulation, the Catholic bishops making up the Episcopal Conference of Austria issued a declaration on November 29th. While stressing the urgent need to reduce abortions, the bishops also emphasized the importance of supporting women. They clarified that abortion cannot be considered a health service, and pregnancy is not an illness. Consequently, the bishops expressed opposition to performing abortions in public health facilities. Iraqi Church leaders have issued a statement denouncing the violence in the Holy Land and expressing their disappointment with the presidential decision regarding the Chaldean Patriarch, which revoked a decree that recognized his authority. They also expressed deep sorrow over the tragic Christian wedding in Karakosh and voiced concern over the lack of punishment for those responsible. Furthermore, prelates are urging the government to address corruption. They also advocate for strengthening the military and police to promote stability and growth in the country. The statement was released after a meeting in Erbil, Iraqi Kurdistan, at the invitation of Cardinal Louis Raphael Sacco. Additionally, church leaders have decided to cancel Christmas and New Year celebrations, opting for church prayers and rituals to honor the victims of Baghdad and the Holy Land. The funeral of toddler Indy Gregory will be held on December 1st at Nottingham Cathedral. The 8-month-old from Ilkeston, who had been suffering from mitochondrial disease, died after her life support was removed after the ruling of the British judiciary. The baby died in her mother's arms after being moved from Queen's Medical Center in Nottingham to a hospice on November 13th. Although the Italian government granted Indy citizenship and offered treatment arrangements at the Vatican Hospital, the UK High Court ruled that a move to Italy would not be in Indy's so-called best interest, and her life support must be removed at the hospital. The Catholic Charity Aid to the Church in Need, also known as ACN, announced a support package of 2.3 million euros to address the educational crisis in Syria and Lebanon. The charity's objective is to help the impoverished families to educate their children and also to prevent the growth of extremism. Over 16,000 children in 176 schools will receive the aid to meet the educational costs. Mario Boutros, Lebanon's ACN project coordinator, said that the schools in Syria and Lebanon rely on international financial support for survival. In Taraba State, Nigeria, the Christian Association of Nigeria has called on the government to take decisive action to permanently halt the recent spate of killings by armed groups. The state has witnessed the tragic deaths of numerous individuals at the hands of these groups. In a statement, the Christian Association, which includes representatives from the Catholic Bishops' Conference of Nigeria, brought attention to the authorities regarding the escalating violence. The group emphasized the need for a thorough investigation to identify the perpetrators and ensure they face justice. Additionally, they urged the public to maintain composure, avoid taking the law into their own hands, and instead cooperate with security agencies by providing relevant information for the arrest of the culprits. Belfast City Council has proposed bylaws aimed at fining individuals who set up stalls with information leaflets in the city center. The proposed bylaws also extend to the use of amplification equipment. While the council states that the new bylaws are intended to tackle noise nuisance, concerns have been raised that the laws may specifically target pro-life groups and street evangelists. Precious Life, a pro-life group, currently has a weekly stall in the city center where they distribute information leaflets on the dangers of abortion and collect signatures for pro-life petitions. The organization argues that the proposed bylaws represent a blatant attack on free speech and would be both far-reaching and disproportionate. Bishop Kevin Rhodes, the Bishop of Fort Wayne, South Bend, Indiana, has called on the Board of Trustees of St. Mary's College, which is situated in the diocese, to correct a new admissions policy that goes against Catholic teachings on the nature of women. The new policy, which was approved by the school's Board of Trustees in June, reads, St. Mary's considers admission for undergraduate applicants whose sex is female or who consistently live and identify as women. In a statement expressing his disappointment, the prelate said that he was not consulted on the issue, which concerns an important church teaching. He said, to call itself a women's college and to admit male students who consistently live and identify as women suggests that the college affirms an ideology of gender that separates sex from gender and claims that sexual identity is based on the subjective experience of the individual. This ideology is at odds with Catholic teaching. During a conversation with the Pontifical Foundation Aid to the Church in Need, Lahore Archbishop Sebastian Francis Shaw revealed that Islamic leaders are now taking initiatives to speak up for persecuted Christians. He pointed to the Jaranwala incident, where a violent mob targeted Christians based on allegations of blasphemy against two Christian brothers, as a pivotal moment in the evolving relations between the Catholic Church and Islam. The Archbishop expressed optimism that the support from Muslim leaders could prompt the government to take measures to safeguard Christians and members of other faith groups from persecution. Archbishop Shaw, a long-standing advocate of interreligious dialogue, remains hopeful for positive change. And those are your latest headlines. Join us again tomorrow for more. You can also visit us at swnews.org for more updates. Shalom.